Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan, and today's a really exciting day because we start a new project car that just happens to be the world's cheapest supercar. So this huge opportunity came up to start a new project for the channel, and since we had already wrapped up the LS Swap Bel Air and Project Billy, and we're kind of in the middle of a small block build right now, but that can be on the side, we don't have a car project. So I figured this one fell into my lap. I'm gonna snatch it up, and it's gonna be the new official Two Car Pros project car, and I promise it's an exciting one. So let's jump into it. So before we even go get the car, we are going to have to sort, label, and organize all this stuff that came with it to make the car work and be complete. There is a lot. So I'm gonna put all this stuff on that rack over there, and all the stuff on that rack needs to be either consolidated, sold, or thrown away. Don't worry, I won't make you watch that. So here it is. It's a Factory 5 GTM. This is a kit car, essentially, that sort of looks like a Ford GT. Not currently, but I'm working on that. Now, I'm sorry I didn't get any footage of unloading everything off the trailer and the engine and everything else, because I had help that day, and the people helping me were being super cool, and I didn't want to be like, hey, stop helping me for free. I need to film something real quick, so I just wanted to get things done. But I did get a few pictures, as you're seeing right now. How I ended up with the car was actually, this was a friend of a friend's. Guy was a little bit older, couldn't really get through this car. He bought it about 14 years ago, got to right about here, and then unfortunately had to stop for a number of reasons. And he sold this car to me for very inexpensive, with the agreement that I finish the car and he gets to drive it, or at least ride in it. So let's take a look around the car and see what needs to be done. The first thing I noticed is that the radiator is installed along with an AC condenser, so it is going to have air conditioning, which is super cool. It already has some really nice fans already installed. They just need to be wired up. That's super easy. It's already been plumbed too, so I don't have to worry about that. The only thing I did notice is that it's only plumbed one steam line on LS's, which this is going to have. It has a steam line that I have to plumb the other side of, or else the steam line will just vent into the radiator and out the bottom of essentially the transmission cooler on whatever radiator this is. I'm sure it's for a Corvette. Everything on this car is basically Corvette parts. Looks like the sway bar needs to be taken out and powder coated, or at the very minimum painted, because it's all rusted up. The brakes are absolutely massive. I think the original application is for a Ferrari F50. It's an aftermarket rotor. I'm unsure who makes it. I think it's maybe Race Motion or something like that. Obviously, Brembo calipers. They are huge for this car. I do see that the rotor, I think the rotor's on backwards. What I mean by that is that this rotor should go on the other side of the car, but I'll look into that and double check, make sure I'm not just being mistaken. And then all of like the suspension bits, like the upper and lower control arms, things like that, are off of, I think, an '05 Corvette. So it's almost all GM stuff, which is my preference in the aftermarket. So the design is a GM design, but this is an aftermarket upper control arm that are really adjustable, made by SPC, but the spindle is stock aluminum GM stuff. You'll notice the coilover isn't installed yet. I do have them. They came with the car. They're just not in yet. And this is what the ride height is going to be. So this is basically set where it's going to be, so we can work on it without the car lowering and raising itself unnecessarily. It does come partially wired at the very minimum with a Holley Dominator EFI system. This ECM and setup is easily $2,000. These are really, really nice, but they are pricey. And to power the whole thing is this LS2. It's a 6-liter all-aluminum LS engine. It's been rebuilt by some race engine manufacturer. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. It's got a Mazir water pump, electric water pump, because we're not going to run a serpentine belt on that. The only thing that's going to be belted is the alternator and the AC compressor, which is an interesting option for a car like this to have. It has custom Kooks headers that look really, really nice. It has a Mandiola 5-speed manual transmission. This is a super premium unit and very known for its robustness and ability to handle power. It'll definitely handle the about 550, 600 horsepower that this LS is going to throw out. I'd be shocked if it was making 600. Probably 5 is a good bet. And we're going to be able to put it on the dyno, not the engine dyno, but the rolling road dyno, when we get this in the car and fired up and running. The body, unfortunately, is a little bit less interesting than the rest of it, just because it's just a fiberglass construction. I think it uses a Corvette windshield. It does use Corvette glass for the doors, and the doors are kind of going to scissor up like this. It's going to look really neat. It actually has Koenigsegg side markers that were thought out and kind of previously wanted by the previous owner. And since the holes are there, I'm just going to use them anyway, because why not? I think they're going to look really sleek and sharp. But this you probably won't see for a while. Basically, the next step for the body is just send it for paint, because that's all it really needs. And then once the car is more or less together, the body is going to be dropped on top. And then it's just wiring lights and accessories like that, and you're pretty much done. So not a small amount of work to be sure, but nowhere near as much as if you got this kit brand new in like 2005. I think the work hours to get one of these done is something like 600 hours I was reading online, and I'm willing to bet this car's probably got about 200 to 250 work hours left in it to get it on the road and absolutely perfect. So let's get started. So we're looking at is a spot on the frame just right here. This is where the kit wants our engine ground, so that way the engine can be grounded to the frame like it should be. But I did notice it's a little rusty because it's been sitting for so long, and engine grounds don't really like to be rusty at all. So let's clean that up and make sure it's nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my cable and put it on there, and you know what, I'm gonna use a washer too. And then I have this really nice lock nut. It's a stainless steel lock nut, which is great. And I'm just gonna get that started. And then, so it doesn't rust in the future, because that'd be a bummer, I'm just gonna glurp in some dielectric grease like that in between the car and the negative ground cable. And then we'll just tighten it up. Most things on this car are actually American thread, which is pretty cool. And this nylock nut's going to make sure it's not going to just fall off, you know, when the car's operating. And then I'm actually going to leave this loose because I'm unsure the clock of how I want this. I don't know if I want to run it like this and up and around. Probably. That's probably how I will do it. So I'm just going to leave it like that and leave it a little bit loose, because what I need to do basically next is put the engine in. So here's actually what the engine bay looks like. Now you might be thinking I'm a little brash putting the engine in next, but here's the thing. I've parted all of the wires to the sides of where the engine's going to sit. And my thinking is you need to give a place for these wires to go, because I don't know how long this wire is supposed to be before I put a connector on it and be able to plug it in the engine. Is it okay this long? I don't know. Would I like it to be nice and, you know, tight and look nice? Yeah, I don't want these big, long, looping things, or maybe I need to make these wires longer. I don't know yet. That's the problem. So I need to give these wires a place to go, and the way you do that is you put the engine in the car. So let's go ahead and take this header off as well. It's just a 10 millimeter. And no, not all the bolts are in. I didn't put this header on. I think this was just here for mock-up. And besides, if this was a final installation, I would at least spring for the better bolts. And then when you're taking the last bolt off, brace the header with the other hand. And then we can just take our header up and out of the way. The next thing I thought we'd do together is wire this knock sensor, and it is wired basically how everything else is wired, with pins, and it's a custom application. So once you know how to do it for one thing, you'll know how to do it for everything. So I'm going to show you how to do this just as kind of quick how-to. The first thing I do is buy the actual connector itself. You know, I can't make these, unfortunately, not yet at least. But you can buy these on Amazon or eBay or just your local parts distro. You just want to get that connector so we have somewhere to put the pins. I'm going to double check that it's the correct one, and it is. So now we can take it over to our workbench and figure out how, not only how to put the wires in the pins, how to put the pins in a connector, and make sure that the wires are in the right spot. So here's one of the actual pins that's going to eventually interface with our sensor. It is very small. I apologize if it's too small to really see anything. I'm doing my best here. So the first thing I do with these is on the large part of the actual pin here, I squeeze these closed just a little bit. I have found that it makes it easier in the crimper itself to kind of get these started, at least a little bit. And then I even have the correct colored wire for the original GM wiring harness. So we can stick that in like that, make sure it's going to fit. And this portion here actually goes around the heat shrink, and then the middle portion goes around the copper itself. Since it looks like it's going to fit, let's go ahead and get our crimpers out. Yeah, you're going to have to buy a tool, but I've never seen that as a downside. And then the big side goes in one way, and the little side goes in the other. So I like to just sort of pre-stage it like this, so that way I can't just lose it. And then what you can do is take the wire and stick it in there, making sure that it's in its home, which it is, and then just crimp and crimp your part away. There we go. It'll actually stop on its own. And check that out. You get a masterful, beautiful crimp that can't just come undone. And I like to go just one step further. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So what I like to do is right there is I like to just put a bit of solder. It's a little difficult to do. The camera in my way, but I'm trying. Is I like to just put a dot of solder right there, just like this, and have it nice and smoothed over like that. It doesn't take very much, but look at that. Now the pin itself is actually soldered to the wire, and it makes it a lot stronger and a lot more robust. And in a racing situation, I always recommend this because now it's basically impossible to rip this off without causing some serious damage. Now, how do we decide which wire goes to where? It's a 50-50 shot, and I'll miss it every single time. So this is how you tell, is you print out your wiring sheet, and that's going to be different car to car, but LS stuff is super, super common. Here's our knock sensor connector in question, and we can see that knock odd, which is what we're trying to do. We already did the even one on the passenger bank, is right here. And we can see the B goes to a common ground with all the other sensors, so that's not the one we're looking for, but we now know that B is going to be our black wire, which I've already made. So we need to find where A is going to go. So A is going to go do this way, and that's how we know it's going to be beige and blue. Beige with blue stripe, but I didn't have that, so I used blue and white. It's fine. I know. So we can see that that goes there. So in slot A, we are going to want our blue wire, and then in B, we're going to want our black. And if you flip it over, it might be a little challenging to see, but right there is a little A, and there is a little B. So we know which one goes. If we look down in the connector, it's a little challenging to see, but there's basically a groove sticking straight up that corresponds with this hanging off the top of our pin. So that can go into here, make sure it's on A, and it is. Slink that down in there. And then you get to this step and you can't push anymore, so you need something long and thin to push it in just like that, and check it out. Now, this can't fall out. That is excellent. And then just do the same thing for the ground. Make sure it's in that groove, just like that. Push it from the back side. Oops, don't miss. Yeah, nice. Then we just take the weather packing and put it in there. Technically, you don't have to have it for the thing to function, but it will last longer if you do this step, so I think it's worth it. And there we go. It's ready to go on our engine. We'll just make sure that it goes on nice and easy like that. Now, if you're going to put the engine in, you know, I would wrap the wires around somewhere, or you can just disconnect the pigtail and put it on later, but I'm going to put it on there just so I don't lose it for right this second. I will most likely take it off before we put the engine on. So I've been doing a bunch of thinking about how we're going to get this into the car. It's going to be a challenge, and I keep coming back to, I think we're going to have to take the intake manifold off, unfortunately, but luckily with LS stuff, it is really easy. So you just remove these top really long fasteners on this particular intake manifold. And with everything else disconnected, that can just come up and off. Wow, that is a brand new engine. So these holes are not blind, they go into water. So when we put the intake manifold back on, we gotta put some RTV sealant, something to remember. And then before we do anything else, we're gonna get some painter's tape and cover up our intake ports. There we go, it looks really nice. So I've got everything rigged up the way I think it's going to work. I have these brackets that were made by the previous owner to pick up the engine, intake manifold off, everything I can to get everything out of the way, so that way we have access to the lifter valley. If we need to drop this apparatus, we might have to get everything lower to get into the car. I have this over here secured onto the transmission. Everything is very nice and secure and firm. I hope this works. This is a pretty peculiar lift. Normally when you're doing this kind of a thing, the engine's the other way around, the transmission's away from you. This time the transmission's to me, and we have to take this card off too. So we should start being able to pick this up and see how we're doing. So far so good. That looks really nice. I'm happy with that. And then we can tilt it the other way so it's level. That's the nice thing about a load leveler. Hopefully it's not at the end of the travel by the time the thing's level. Nope, we're good. Okay, so now we can take this cart off. All right, there we go. And it's coming up nice and level. That is excellent. Next stop, GTM. Everything seems reasonably secure, and I think it's gonna go in. The only wild card right this moment is the headers. I'm unsure if I'm gonna be able to get the headers in with the engine in the car, but we're gonna find out. This is a very careful dance. Let it down just this touch. Oh yeah, I'm already feeling better about that. This is really gonna be right behind me in the car. All right, here we go. Transmission mount installed. The engine mounts are in and bolted down. The only thing left to do is get the engine crane out of the way, and this is looking incredible. All right, let tension off the chain. I have not done this yet, so. Oh, here we go. Wow. You know, it's fun to work all day on something, and then it comes to fruition and actually works out exactly the way you hoped it would. Now time for the pull away. Oh yeah. Wow. So this is what the engine looks like in its home. I'm gonna leave the load leveler on there for right this moment in case it needs to come back out, although I don't think it does. The only thing I'm a little concerned about if it needed to come back out is if the header would clear. Gently. Gently now. And I think we're good, yeah. That fits on perfectly well. All right. And the other side looks like it'll be exactly the same. So, this is all good to go. This project's gonna take a long time. I'm hoping to have this more or less done by not this Christmas of 2024, but the Christmas of 2025. That would be absolutely incredible, and I am going to put this thing on the dyno. I am going to take it to a track day. I am going to be driving it on the road, hopefully, because I have a registration exemption for this particular car. It's going to have air conditioning. It's going to have heater. It is going to rip. This car is going to be a ton of fun, and I hope you join me on the journey. One of the reasons I wanted to build this car, too, is that it takes all of the basics of the automotive know-how that I have on this channel and dials it all the way up to 11. This is about as complicated as you can get for a project car without putting in like custom ABS or something like that. This is going to push me to the limit, and it's going to be very exciting to watch, and it's going to take everything that I've taught and culminate it into something outrageous. Thank you so very much for watching. If you found anything helpful or interesting, please consider liking or subscribing or even becoming a member, because this project is going to cost a lot of money and I could use the support. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.